HARK, we are here for an impromptu episode of Regroup Phase. I'm trying something. There's a couple of people who have done quick reaction content, and while I am not a reactor, I'd like to put together some information and showcase to you guys a couple of things that are very interesting about the quote-unquote meta right now, as well as a big tournament that has happened as of recording. Technically, the full event is not finished, but it has gone up to the top 8, which I believe will start the next day. I'm not exactly sure what the tournament structure for this event is, but what we're looking at here is I have a website that has the link to the organized play event, that's the organizer, I guess. They've created UK's first premier Star Wars Unlimited launch event. So we're going to be looking at this. We're also going to be looking at a set of tweets here from DHaus from Unplayable, who I think has a really good grasp on the analyzation of these results, as well as a couple of other things about the tournament itself and what we're seeing in terms of decks and playlists. So we're going to go through both of those. This is not going to be a very edited video. I'm just going to throw stuff out and we're going to take a look at how it goes. So let's start with this main page here. And this main page is the event organization here. It shows you the tickets because it's in the UK, stuff's in pounds. So it's £15 per player to play, yada, yada, blah, blah. None of that really matters. It was in Twickenham, which I'm sure is the incorrect pronunciation of that. I apologize to anybody that's offended. But the important parts here are it is standard, premier. They said constructed, but it's premier, whatever. Up to 8 Swiss rounds, depending on attendance. 55-minute matches, best of 3. That's what most of the competitive tournaments should end up being. Yada, yada, registration. Our participation here showcases that each player gets 5 packs of Spark of Rebellion. Top 65 and better get additional pricings. Prices do not stack. So if you get top 64, you don't get 5 additional packs and a booster box and 2 booster boxes and so on and so forth. You understand. So everybody's walking home with 5, which is actually really good for £15. You're basically getting 2 extra packs for playing in a tournament. Top 64 gets an additional 5 packs, so 10 packs total. Top 32 each gets a booster box. Top 16 each gets 2 booster boxes. Top 8 gets 4. Third and fourth place each get a case. Second place gets 2 cases, and then the champion gets 4 cases total of Spark of Rebellion. I don't know exactly how they're funding this. Based upon the numbers here, it is kind of a loss in general, because every person's getting more than what they paid into it. But they know what they're doing. They're running the event. That's not why we're here. We had, I believe, a grand total of 222 players. Show all players, please. Oh, boy. 222 players. We had, obviously, you can see there's a lot of drops. One person played every single round and lost all 8 rounds. Props to them for sitting through and playing 8 games. I wouldn't go after losing like 3, honestly. So, looking at the top 8 here, you'll notice something very conspicuous. 8 Boba Fett decks. We'll go over this a little bit when we take a look at DHaus's tweets. But our top 8 records are 1 player at 8-0, ran the field. We have 6 players at 7-1, and 1 player at 6-2, with our 9th place player, a Grand Inquisitor player, bubbling out at the same record. Just happened to have a weaker SOS than the individual that was at rank 8 here. So lots of different decks here. You can see the win percentages here. LimitlessTCG does a really good job of recording tournaments for stuff like that. It looks like they got the Star Wars Unlimited pairings and stuff up really quick. They're probably using their own proprietary tournament software to be able to run this event, but it looks like everything has gone smooth out there, and I really appreciate that a lot. So we're going to flip over here to DHaus. DHaus gives us this nice graphic. This was, I believe, put out by LimitlessTCG themselves, showcasing that the metagame breakdown for the total decks was Boba Fett had 43 decks, Sabine had 32, Vader had 26, Iden had 25, Director Krennic had 16, Luke had 14, Grand Moff Tarkin had 8, Chirrut had 7, Grand Admiral Thrawn had 6, Emperor Palpatine had 5, Han Solo had 5, and there are 15 other decks that represent every other leader except for Jyn Erso, which we'll point that out later. One thing to note that this does not showcase is the base breakdown. Every Boba Fett deck here was not command. In fact, 2 of the top 8 decks were Boba Fett Cunning. So that's actually really good. That means that it's not just all Boba Fett command. Boba Fett is a dominating presence in the meta, but this tournament is giving us a good showcase as to why that's the case and what players need to do to adjust to fix that. So 222 players, he digs into stuff. That's pretty cool. Starting off with the elephant in the room, the top 8 was all Boba Fett leaders. 6 of them were on Energy Conversion Lab, and 2 were Mono Cunning. I'm not going to say the colors. I'm not doing it. This was at DHaus actually noticed something that I noticed pretty early on. The 8-0 player went up against 6 different decks. It was, yeah. So Luke, Boba, Grand Inquisitor, Iden, Emperor Palpatine, and Sabine Wren as the 6 different leaders. But each person this person played had at least 4 wins across the tournament. And in 5 of these games, those other players eventually end up going 6-2, including, I believe, the 9th place Grand Inquisitor player, 6-2, bubbled out, unfortunately, but it is what it is. So, and this, talking specifically a little bit more about that, this is the Grand Inquisitor deck that AAKOOLJ played at one point. They were 5-0 in the event, ended up losing 2 of the last 3 and falling out. This is a very neat deck, running Security Complex. I get the idea. I'm obviously not a fan of it. You all know. Pause the video, take a look at this deck list. Underneath here is just the leaders. You don't need to worry about that. It's a fairly interesting deck list. If you're interested in running Grand Inquisitor, this is probably the list that you should be on. Only 2 Sabine players total made it to 6-2 and better. And we'll see here, our first Sabine was in 23rd place, going 6-2 with a opponent win percentage of, where was that again? 59.3 and an opponent's percentage of 54.4. Now, what that means is that each opponent that he played in this person's 8 rounds, I shouldn't assume gender, my apologies. The total win percentage of all of his opponents for each round he played was only 59.3%, and the win rate of his opponents only ended up being 54. This is how strength of schedule is figured out. Effectively, you take a look at your list of opponents, you go, you record what each of those opponents did for the rest of the tournament and what the opponents of those players did. So if you go through an 8-round tournament, your strength of schedule is based around a high amount of players. But the most important aspect is in an 8-round tournament, the 8 players you played, and then the 7 opponents each of your opponents played thereafter. So it's a big complex thing. It means there's very few ties. It means it's a granular way of figuring out exactly who is in what place, which is why our Grand Inquisitor player bubbled off compared to our 8th Boba Fett player here in top 8. Our next Sabine Wren after 23rd was 33rd with a 62.5% opponent rating, but only going 5-3, and then his opponent's opponent rating was 58.2%. It's a lot of numbers there. If you don't care, we'll move on. The favorite stat of the day that DHaus pointed out here was, out of the 222 players, 33 of them finished 6-2. That's kind of rare. You usually see a little bit higher rating of players that are going to go not necessarily undefeated, but in a higher bracket than that. 8 rounds, you go 6-2. That usually allows you to hit that top cut in terms of that, but we did only get, I believe it was 1 player, going 6-2. So my experiences with tournaments are a little bit different than probably what went on here, but it's actually pretty cool that that is the case. And of the 31 players who went 6-2, the missing leaders out of that group were Tarkin, Hera, IG-88, Cassian, and Chewbacca. Obviously, in the event, no person played Jyn Erso, which is unfortunate because every leader should be getting played. I'm actually surprised people chose IG-88 over Jyn, because Jyn, to me, is a better leader, and I think to the community as a whole, but we'll not worry about that right now. We'll go over some other stuff later. This is the most important tweet that DHaus put out as part of the tweet chain here. Overall, I know that the Boba stat is going to dominate the headlines. Top 8, most represented deck in the format, yada yada. But I'm personally very pleased to see a wide range of decks perform decently well. I would have loved to see a top cut and see what came out of it, and I love this game and I can't wait to see more. Actually, rereading that, it probably means that they did not do a top cut, even though they're supposed to. Yeah, you don't run a tournament this large with 8 rounds without a top cut, even if you have to do it the next day. There's no reason why they shouldn't have done a top cut. That's kind of sus. But congratulations to Mr. Cool, who ended up winning the event. Let's take a look at Mr. Cool's deck list here. Can we open this as an image? We sure can. So, obviously, Boba Command, running ECL. That's going to be basically every Boba Command deck unless they're super worried about aggro, which they shouldn't worry because Boba's aggro matchup is actually very favored in Boba's favor. 3 Greedo, 3 Crafty Smuggler, 3 Cartel Spacer, 1 Viper Probe Droid, 3 Super Laser Technicians, 3 Boba Fett Legendaries, 3 7th Fleet Defenders, 3 Consortium Star Vipers, 3 Steadfast Battalions, 3 Bosks, 3 Fett's Fire Spray, 3 Darth Vaders, 2 Reinforcement Walkers, 2 Shoot First, 3 Surprise Strike, 3 Resupply, 3 Waylay, 3 Overwhelming Barrage, 1 Traitorous, and the sideboard is the 3rd copy of Shoot First, 2 copies of No Good to Me Dead, a 2nd copy of Viper Probe Droid, 1 copy of Callus, 2 copies of Change of Heart, the 3rd Reinforcement Walker, and 2 copies of Relentless. So this is a very interesting deck list. It's going to be what your average deck list is, although I do note a lot of players are playing more Viper Probe Droids than this, and not main decking the Reinforcement Walker, choosing that as a sideboard option. That's actually personally what I'm working with right now. But I'm also not running all 3 Boba Fetts because, unfortunately, I only have 2. But I do have the 3 Vaders, so that's good there. This is a good quality deck list, obviously, as before, and as it will be basically forever. Y'all know how I feel about Traitorous. Get it out of here. But main decking the Reinforcement Walker, I think, is actually a pretty decent idea because it does, when you can get there, especially with your ramp of your resupply and your Super Laser Technicians, it gives you the option to get that extra heal or the card draw, plus a 6 power, 8 cost unit on the board with 9 health. You're doing good all around. The key plays that you're going to be doing as the Boba Fett player in the early game is you're playing Greedo, you're playing your Crafty Smuggler, or you're playing your Viper Probe Droid the first round. The second round almost always will be a Super Laser Technician or a Resupply unless you got unlucky and didn't have those in hand. Otherwise, you're probably looking at a Star Viper or a 7th Fleet Defender. But eventually, when you get to your turn that you can flip your leader out, whether that is on 4 because you accelerated or on 5 because you weren't able to accelerate, you're going to end up flipping Boba Fett, being able to do something like Shoot First before you flip to get your resource back from Shoot First, flip Boba Fett to be able to get the extra resources back if you do something else, and also Steadfast Battalion that turn to be able to do some extra damage with the Energy Conversion Lab, get the extra attack power from the attack value on it, and getting the extra damage out with your Boba Fett leader, who only has 4 power, but is still going to be doing something. That is so backbreaking for most decks. That is why we see Boba Fett doing so well. However, there is a counter to this deck. Kill its units. And you have to be able to do that effectively without losing too much on your own. There is a deck out there that is as close to an auto win against this as pretty much can be. Luck of the draw, player skill is going to come into involvement. But I'm going to let the meta kind of shake out a little bit and see if other people can figure this out as well. One of my local players in this area, who actually is in college further south than us, is on the deck that counters this. And we'll see if that ends up meaning much once we figure out how to beat this outside of that or with that deck choice. So that's your main deck list here for our winner. Let's take a look at our 6 and 2 and see what they had here. Looks like it's mostly the same, sideboarding the Traitorous and the Reinforcement Walker in favor of going full Shoot First, No Good to Me Dead in the main board, the 3 Viper Probe Droids, so on and so forth. This actually looks a lot closer to my deck. I guess what is really flipped is I'm running 3 Waylay and only 2 of the Boba Fetts. So, interesting setups there for this player. Let's see if we can find quickly and take a look at the, yeah, here we go. This is the second place list that was running just Cunning. So, Boba Fett leader, Administrator's Tower, base, 3 Mining Guild TIE Fighters, 2 Greedos, 3 Outer Rim Headhunters, 3 Crafting Smugglers, 3 Cartel Spacers, 3 Pirated Starfighters, 3 Bodhi Rook, 3 Boba Fett, 3 7th Fleet Defenders, 3 Bosk, 3 Fett's Fire Spray, 3 Asteroid Sanctuary, good call, 3 copies of No Good to Me Dead, 3 Surprise Strike, 3 Waylay, 3 Cunning, 3 Snapshot Reflexes, and the sideboard is 3 Shoot First, 2 Bib Fortuna, 3 Outmaneuver, and 2 Change of Heart. You can do well without having to use command. The priciest portion of this specific list is obviously the Boba Fetts and a little bit more the Cunnings. But because people aren't playing Boba Cunning, those Cunnings aren't going to be as expensive as, say, trying to pull a Darth Vader or even pull a Boba Fett through secondary markets or through booster boxes, so on and so forth. So This is a very interesting tournament. I think that, to quote a movie, this is going to be the spark that lights the fire that is the end of the First Order. The First Order being Boba Fett as a strong leader in the meta. Looking at this Iden Versio list, it looks like this person also went, whoa, this person went aggression. One copy of No Good to Me Dead, probably for the removal aspect. This is an interesting deck. Keep your eye on this because this is going to be relevant. Pause the video if you need to. Take a look at this list. Go check out the deck list listing. I'll actually put a link to DHaus's tweet chain and a link to this event in the description below. Y'all can check that out there. But for the meantime, I think that this event is going to do some interesting stuff in terms of forcing people to really think about the meta, to think about how to deal with Boba Fett, to think about if they're in an okay space to deal with Sabine, because Sabine is another one of those boogeymen in the meta. But as you can see with this specific event, and yes, it's only one event, so it doesn't define the meta as a whole, but it was a large event, and it is going to give you an average experience of what the meta is looking like right now. And this is where I think the rotational aspect of our meta, at least in set 1, is going to come in place. A lot of people were on Sabine. Control ends up beating Sabine. Boba's come in to kind of meddle with that a little bit. So we'll see where the next wave of meta comes when people are playing decks that are trying to figure out if they have a strong enough game against Sabine and if they have a strong enough game against Boba. And it'll be very interesting to see exactly how this comes out and what this means for us going into set 2. So I hope you all enjoyed this video. Like I said, this was a one take, not even going to edit it. I'm just going to process the video, throw it up, see how it works, see how it manages to do for you all. But thank you for joining me for this second episode of Regroup Phase. If you like seeing this level of content, please let me know. I can go through and review other tournament results if they're sent to me or if I know them. And we can all enjoy this lovely game together with the results and the theory crafting that we all love to do here at RybackStun and on the internet, because the internet is one big ball of theory crafting. Anyway, like, comment on the video, subscribe to the channel, follow me on all of my lovely social medias at RybackStun. Check out my other playlists. I do have the Action Phase playlist, I do have the Regroup Phase playlist, and I have just my generic Star Wars Unlimited playlist. Check out more videos. I would love the help there. Thank you very much. Appreciate each and every one of you who spend your time with me in these lovely videos. And with that, I will see you in the stars.